Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I hope all of you can hear me. Yes? Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for attending the editorial team workshop. I'm Thomas Tam. I work at the Department of Cultural and Creative Arts at the Education University of Hong Kong. The title of the workshop is Advice from an Editor and Reviewer for Authors Submitting Paper. The aims of the workshop is to let participants better understand the work of co-editor and reviewer, and to get participants better prepare the papers for submission to iJADE. Maybe I can share a little bit about my personal experience. I work at the university, I have to publish, and I also look for a venue to publish papers in a very good journal. So sometimes my papers got published, but in many occasions they didn't. So I just would like to know what are the criteria of accepting or declining a paper? As an author, what can I do to get my paper having more possibilities to get published? And how editors and reviewers handle my paper? So that's why I would like to have this workshop and hope that I can let participants better understand the work of editor and reviewer so that they can prepare their papers better. For the contents, first of all, we talk about the work of co-editor, its workflow, what are the challenges and reward working as a co-editor, and then I will talk about the work of reviewer. I'll share with you about the review criteria, some examples and some suggestions, for example, to review and to revise the papers. There are two activities that I would like you to participate during the workshop. They're in the format of Google Form. By that time, Dan will help posting the link, and then you can click, and then you can enter, and then you can do the survey. I would like to reserve about 10 to 15 minutes by the end of the workshop so that we can discuss, and then we can ask questions and see we can answer. And also, I think there are other editors in the workshop. They can also share the experience. Okay, I start with the work of editor. Maybe perhaps I talk about how I become the co-editor of iJADE first. I remember last December, I occasionally saw the message in the iJADE website calling for editor. So I write an application and then send it out. I think it is in February, I received an invitation from the journal that there will be an interview. I remember seeing Deborah, as well as Emma. I cannot remember this, but we had an interview. And then after a couple of days, I'm glad that I can join the editorial team. And in April, we have a meeting, and then we also have a workshop to familiarize with the ScholarOne manuscript system. And then I begin to work as a co-editor. I receive assignments from the editorial assistant. And then I begin my first paper to work as a co-editor. So when I look into the details and the statistics of the journal, submissions come from usually in three main types, like book review, letter to the editor. But most of them, more than 95%, are original articles from authors. So my first work is that if I receive an assignment from the editorial system, I will have an initial check the following, for example, the number of words, anonymity, and in particular, the scope and the relevancy of the paper. Okay, about the aims and scope of the iJADE, at the very beginning, I go back to the journal website and check the aims and scope. So here I just select one or two paragraphs from the website, and I would like to find out what are the keywords underlying these paragraphs so that I can find out what are the most important elements that I have to look for to determine the relevancy, whether this paper is within the scope of iJADE. So referring to this paragraph, the International Journal of Adult Education provides an international forum for research in the field of art and creative education. It is the primary source for the dissemination of independently reviewed articles about the visual arts, creativity, craft, design, and art history in all aspects, phases, and types of education contexts and learning situations. The journal welcomes articles from a wide range of theoretical methodological approaches to research and encourages submissions from the broader fields of education and arts that are concerned with learning through art and creative education. So apparently, it is about visual arts, creativity, there are research elements in it, and it is also related to education. I can find more in the author guidelines. So here, there are a few paragraphs talking about the aims and scope. Okay, I just select this paragraph. So the following list is not exhaustive and may give a flavor of the topics and areas of research. The journal provides a platform, the social and cultural values which inform creative and art-based education, methodology of art-based research, the value of arts in the curriculum, community-based learning, the politics of arts education, philosophy of the arts in education, progressive education through the arts, critical engagement with art of the past, prospect for the future art and design education, international comparisons of arts practice, aesthetic education, architecture and public arts in education, the crafts and tradition and unity, design cultures and practice, contemporary art in education, conceptual arts and learning. So when I go through these three words, education, research, always appear. So I think these three may be the most important keywords underlying iJADE. So it is about education, including, for example, curriculum, teaching and learning, pedagogy. It is about art, different kinds of visual arts, including design, crafts, creativity, art history, aesthetics, architecture. And it has certain research elements as well, different types of research methodologies like experimental research, art-based research, phenomenology, ethnography. So I think the paper has more or less these three elements. Maybe you put more emphasis on one of them, but nevertheless, there should be education, art, and research. But by research, it doesn't mean that it has to be this type of traditional research. Even, for example, school project can have a research element. For example, if you describe the school project you're working with your students, we still want to know, for example, how do you collect feedback from your students? How do you know that your project is successful? So probably you will ask yourself some questions, and then you will collect feedback from your students or from your partners, from other teachers, and then you will evaluate the success of the project. Still, it is a kind of research. So to tell you whether the project is good or not. So to me, I will look for all these three elements in the submitted paper. Okay, let's have an activity. Now here are 5 papers, journal titles, paper titles. So I would like to indicate the relevancy of the following paper titles to iJADE from 5, highly relevant, to 1, not relevant. Okay, it is like this. Diane, can you post the link to the chat room? It is really simple. You just click 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you can indicate your relevancy. Okay. So you can see the link, and then you just go into it. I think you will take a few minutes to have to get your response. So I'm here sharing the response. Okay, now let's have a look at the responses. The first title, okay, still coming some. what works in the architecture studio? 5 strategies to optimizing student learning. Okay, almost 30% say it is highly relevant. 4 mostly relevant is 52 altogether. It is around 80%. Yes, it is relevant. It is an article published in iJADE a few years ago. I think it's 2 or 1 year ago. Okay, so when you see, for example, architectural studio, it is related to visual art. Optimizing student learning, it is probably related to teaching and learning. So it is highly related. And number 2, working utopias, the politics of working in art and anthropology. It is a very normal distribution here. This is not a publication of iJADE. I would let you know, they are real papers. They are published, but in other journals. I'll let you know the name of the journal later. But it is, you can see it is in art and anthropology. It is related to visual arts, but it's not related to education. I have to go into the abstract in the full paper to see whether it is related, it is a certain kind of research element. Okay. Number 3, preparing primary teachers to teach art and design effectively. Yes, very relevant. This is a paper published 20 years ago by Roy Prentice. That's recorded in the Journal of Art and Design Education. Okay, this is easy because it talks about art and design, primary teachers. Number 4, viewing of Philippine rock art in its regional context. Okay, so most of you select not relevant, not relevant, 1 and 2 mostly. Yeah, it is probably a journal published, a paper published in journal about culture, specifically in, for example, in art, in rock art. And then the last one, collective memories of shared space and experience in the creation of habitation of virtual studio. You do not have education, you don't have art in the title, but still you can see virtual studio. It is related to art making. So it is related to art. And if I go back to the abstract, I can see this about the virtual studio. Just because of the COVID-19, we offer the studio to the art and design students and to investigate about their learning experience. So it is also a paper just published 1 or 2 years ago. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint, and then you can see. Okay, you can have a look at the paper, the journal title. So the first one, the third one, and the fifth one have been published in iJADE, but not the second and the fourth one. Okay, then determining the scope and the relevancy, I will also have a preliminary check on the paper about the theoretical background, the research methods, and the contribution. But it is really a very general checking. About the quality of the paper, it will go to the reviewers. But I would like to see they contain these elements in the paper, and then they will go out for review. So the next step is to decide on review or reject. So if it falls beyond the scope of iJADE, then I will say we will reject it. So I will write reasons for rejection to the principal editor. If I think it's okay, it got the basic things and it is relevant to the iJADE, then we proceed to find the reviewers. Actually, this is the most difficult part, being co-editor, to identify and find suitable reviewers. So reviewers will be automatically generated from the Scholar One manuscripts. We have a list of around 50 names. It is automatically generated, but I have to look into, for example, the background of the reviewers, whether it is relevant expertise, and we also will check the reliability. For example, there are statistics on, for example, how how many papers that the reviewer have accepted, how many declined it, how many accepted but did not return, or how many times did not reply. So of course, we would like to find reviewers that they will say yes, and also they will return the paper after they say yes. We will also check the workload. We don't want to overload the reviewers. To me, maybe in a year you review 2 or at most 3 papers will be quite a fair workload. So after doing this, I will select from the list and then invite the reviewers. But in some cases, I cannot find many suitable reviewers, and then I have to go beyond the list. For example, I have to look for previous publications and find relevant expertise. So this is the most time-consuming process. Okay, so usually I'll find a list of reviewers, maybe 6 to 8 in the list first. And then we send out the invitation in a batch like 3 reviewers send out at the same time, and then wait for their response. So they may decline, they may accept, they may not reply, and then I have to and then wait. If they do not reply, I wait for a few days. The system automatically generate a reminder. So in my experience, usually we send out, for example, I send out 3 invitations. Maybe there's 1 say yes, or 1 decline, or 1 did not reply. Sometimes even 1 out of 4 will get a positive response. So and then if there's 1 reviewer already identified that is good, and then I would go to the second batch. I send out 3 invitations again. So it takes quite a lot of time if the reviewers did not reply, or they say no, and then I have to go to the second batch and then the third batch. So I have to make sure that at least there are 2 reviewers saying yes. So the nightmare is sometimes that we send out to reviewers, they say yes, but they did not return. And then we have to send out again. That is the worst thing. And it takes a lot of time. So that is why I understand why sometimes it takes so long to get the reviews from the journal. Now I understand. Previously, I don't understand. I just say why it takes sometimes 3 to 4 months to get the first review, the comments from the first review. Okay. And then after I received the reviewers' comments and recommendations, check whether there are 4 categories: accept, minor revision, major revision, or reject. Okay, and then I will read their comments. And then I have to make recommendation to the principal editor. So I will consolidate comments of the reviewers. If it is easy, it will be, for example, both positive accept or both negative reject. So if it is 1 reject or 1 major revision, then I have to check balance. If there's 2 extremes, perhaps I have to find the 3rd reviewer to do it again and see, well, which side I should go. So after all these, I have to decide on the recommendation and then send to the principal editor. Also, we will send comments to the author. In most cases, there will be a revision, either minor or major. So then I will arrange for the second review. I will ask the reviewers whether they would like to review the paper again. Some will say yes, some will say no. So if they say yes, it's good, and then I will send back the revision to the reviewers. If they say no, then I have to design based on the comments from the first review. And then I follow up with the revised manuscripts, and then finally I will design, accept, and reject, and then make the final recommendation to the principal editor. So at this time, it will be almost finished. The work has co-editor, and then colleagues of the journal publication team will follow up about the publication agreement, the image copyright, proofreading, and then the final publication. Okay, so what are the rewards and challenges? So I have a lot of opportunities to read and learn from the academic papers. I know more people in the visualized education. I know many colleagues from the editorial team. Keep updated in the field. I understand better the running of a journal now. Okay, the workload. In the last 6 months, I had 11 papers, and challenges mostly at the very beginning. I have to get familiar with the electronic system. It is not too easy to use, actually, I have to say. But once you get used of it, it's fine. I have to attend editorial team meetings, and I also have to organize iJADE conference. Okay. So then I go to the work of reviewer. Actually, I have been helping to review papers from other journals as well, some in qualitative methodology and some in art education in Chinese and both English as well. So the work of reviewers is simple. It's simpler when compared to editor, but it also takes quite a lot of time. So I will get an invitation from iJADE, and then I will say accept or reject invitation, whether you would like to go. So far, I remember I accept all the invitations so far. I remember I haven't rejected any of the invitation from iJADE. And then I have to write comments, of course, and then return the review in 1 month. So we have the activity 2 now. What do you think? Which are the reasons of rejecting a paper? You rate 5 most common to 1 least common. Okay, let's have a look at the activity here. It is like this. So you just rate, for example, beyond the general scope. You think it's the least common reason or the most common reason? Okay, so I think, Diane, you can also send out this second link. Yes. Okay, so you click the link and then you can rate. Okay, you may do it now, and then let me check the responses. Okay, we have 16 responses. Let's have a look. The first one is 17 now. Beyond the journal scope. Yes, you're right, mostly. Yes, very common. Outdated literature, not too common. Yes, you're right, not too common. One claims paper, occasionally, sometimes. Yeah. Lecture research aims questions. Actually, it's quite common to me. I'm not sure your experience. Unclear data collection, yes, very problematic sometimes. Unsupported findings and claims, okay, quite general in a sense. Too short, no. Yeah, it is not common. No, I have never rejected a paper because it is too short. No, like the innovation insights, in the middle, I have to say. Incomprehensive English, not quite to me. Mostly I can understand them. Okay, thank you. Let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Yeah. Now I will go to the review criteria. Sorry, I will go to the criteria one by one. I'm not sure whether you know that actually there are guidelines for reviewers, and not even if you're an author, you can have a look at these reviewer guidelines. So if you register as an author, and then you go, for example, you can see my name here, and then next to that you have instructions and forms, and click this, you can find guides for reviewers. Of course, it's also good to look at the instructions for authors. So basically, I read the guide for reviewers thoroughly before I do any reviews. Okay. So to me, the review criteria, the first one is relevancy. So it has relevance to education and pedagogy, have relevance to our design of craft, So here are two examples of non-relevancy. These are two examples taken from the guide. So first one, a very interesting and well-written article on the theory and history of fresco paintings, but it does not touch on education and pedagogy. So easy to understand. An article enthusiastically described a school project in some detail, but failed to analyze, contextualize, or recognize the need for critical framework in which to situate the project. So I think teaching project is fine, but it has to, first of all, it has to be critical. If you mention that this project is very good, it's fun, it's excellent, have very good performance of the student, then I would like to know, how do you know, how are these claims made? So in a way, you're doing research, you will know how to collect the response of students in a systematic manner, and then you can claim that, okay, the student worked very well in this project, okay? So review criteria 2, up-to-date literature. Now, the comments, all these are real comments in italics, but real in the sense that I paraphrase them and I did some editing because the comments are supposed to be confidential. So they are real in a sense, but not real in a sense. You cannot just reading comments and then you can identify the paper. So I have made some changes, but it represents the idea behind the comments. Okay, the highlighted yellow are the positive comments. The others are not too good comments. I think I want to be positive, but I think we learn a lot more by looking at the problem, some of the papers. So good in a way, the first part of the paper in the theoretical framework has provided good context of how and why the study was conceived. Because of the limitation of the work requirement is around 6,000. So we do not expect very long theory, very long background, but at least you have to provide a theoretical framework that you can let me know why and how the study was conceived. To provide a good context is very important by giving us some of the theories behind your project. Okay, the second comment is also good. Most of the literature reference studies from the 80s and 90s, the author may consider referring to more recent theories. Classical theories is fine, it maybe go back to 50s, but at least you have some recent readings and some recent reading of the literature is essential. The literature contains mainly spontaneous observations without critical perspective and a focus. So it is also problematic with just your own observations. You have to substantiate your observations. So the next comment is some of these observations are not substantiated with relevant literature references. Okay, still criteria 3, data collection. Collection methods, appropriate and clearly describe data collection methods. There's a good connection of the 3 implementation phases in terms of the rationales and the use of data collected in the previous phase to build the next phase of research. So it is informative, it is systematic. The next comment, for the methodology section, the author should provide information regarding the criteria, participant selection, rationales of participant grouping, details of interviews such as interview context and questions, number of interviewers, methods of coding. Now, I also understand the word link has a very strong limitation on providing too many details, but at least you have to provide details good enough to let the readers know that it is a rigorous piece of research. It is done systematically with details on how it was being done. Okay, the next one, there's a lack of discussion of the methodology. Document analysis and data collection and analysis method. So, for example, if it's a document analysis method, then you have to tell me what is it and how did you do it. More can be discussed on why document analysis is a preferred method of this study. How are the documents selected? How are they analyzed? Okay, still about the criteria 3, appropriately and clearly described data collection methods. Plenty of the information about the methodology and methods of data collection are missing. So we cannot judge because sometimes the author did not provide enough data. Another major problem is that there were no research questions and it is not clear what were the focus, okay? The next one, if the author would like to present a paper as a report of an empirical study. Now, because sometimes it need not to be research, but if you say that it is a research, then some standard items, some methodology should be included. For example, an indispensable element of a proper research is the research aims at questions. More details can provide on the primary methodology. So it is a methodology used in this study to determine the learning practices. Still this criteria, it seems that the study is phenomenological in nature, but the author claimed that this was an ethnographic study. How did the author assume the role of an observer? So wrong claims. So apparently it is one thing, but you say it is another thing. So it is fundamental flaw in the design of the data collection method. It is not clear how the pre and post tests were scored. Are there any procedures to maintain the validity? Sorry. It is not clear how the pre-test and post-test were scored. Are there any procedures to maintain the validity and reliability of the instrument? The result of the study was based on instrument, but there's very limited evidence that the instrument is valid and reliable. Because sometimes it is a very experimental study. It relies a lot on the instrument. So you have to provide evidence that the instrument is good. Okay, still here. The author claims the paper reports an exploratory study and wording such as research and research findings are used in the main text. However, many elements of formal research are missing. For example, no explicit research aims, no research questions, methods are unclear. The author interviewed a certain group of participants, but the rationales of interviewing them, interview selection criteria, methods are all missing. Okay, then we come to review criteria 4, to me, clear and substantiated findings. Please provide evidence to support and substantiate claims made. Do not make claims which are not derived from the research. So sometimes you describe the research, but the findings and the conclusion is not relevant to the findings. That is not good. So the good thing here, the yellow comment is here, the findings have been discussed thoroughly with reference to the existing literature and the research question. Not so good ones, there's no framework to conduct a comparison of the findings, and the findings are superficial. The discussion result was limited, consider it is an action research. So it may be descriptive in action research, but it is very limited in discussion results. Some parts of the discussion is not related to the project results or not relevant to the research questions. So the last criteria, justify the recommendations and conclusions. The study has generated results which are useful for art teachers, museum educators, and caretakers of people, of a special group of people. So it demonstrates it is useful for the readers. Not so good ones, the paper is primarily a replication of a certain scholar of studying an area. There is limited innovation and contribution of new knowledge to the field. It's just replicating a famous classical study. Overall, the paper lacks academic rigor and there's limited contribution to the field and area of study. So to me, these are the 5 most important criteria in judging the quality of the paper. Okay, after reading the paper, I have to write the comments. So the comments, the aim is to improve the paper, to point out the strength and weakness, and to provide evidence to my observations. So I will also give suggestions. No need to be long, according to the reviewer guideline, 200 to 350 words is enough. I will look for papers that are revisable. That it means we're not asking to the author to totally write a new essay or new paper or to redo the research. So the paper has to, there's some good and not so good points. So it has to be revisable. If it is really not revisable, then I will say I will reject the paper. So I will also have to decide whether to review the revised paper again. Okay, sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. Okay, so also the same category. So I will design, accept, minor revision, major revision, reject. I remember I have given all these different for different papers. And then if I will do the second review, I receive the revised manuscript. I'll decide whether the author has addressed it and respond to the comments. So I would like to see a table to present comments and response clearly. Now, here is an example of myself submitting to the higher education, I think a few months ago. So usually I'll create a table to list out the comments from the first reviewer, the second and third reviewer, and then I'll call them response. So if the comment is it's easy to respond there, thank you for the comment, and then but most of the time the comments are quite difficult to respond. Then I have to think, and then I have to revise. Okay, so here's some just like the format is like this. So I will make this table and then respond to the comments one by one. In the revised manuscript, I will highlight the changes made. I will revise, but sometimes I will not agree with the comment of the reviewers. Then I will write and explain and justify my response. So sometimes maybe due to the paper length, the reviewers did not understand some of the reasons why I write like this. So by that time, I will explain a little bit and then see if it's okay. So some of the revisions I will not made. Okay, and then I have to keep to see whether the revised manuscript will keep to the required word length of the journal. Okay. So as a reviewer, difficulties and challenges, of course, time commitment. Usually we read the paper for the first time and then the second time and then write the comments. I will not say reject or accept at the beginning. So I will write all the comments first, and then I organize the comments, and then I will decide whether it is a major revision, minor revision, object, or reject. Okay. So sometimes difficulty is I'm familiar with the research area, then I have to go and look into some very specific terms, some concepts, and also about sometimes research methodology. I'm a lot of quantitative person. So for example, if we talk about some very specific quantitative analysis, I have to go and check what does it mean. So in a way, I also learn from that. Okay, so these are the difficulties and challenges.